So I think one of the roots of it are these changes in technology, this divorcing of us from a location, or not a location, but a landscape, um, into a map. Right? We live on a map. And we literally, if you take a look at DFW Airport, I think is the first one in the world, which was the duplication of the map of itself, not the other way around.
Okay.
Because it was not, the building of it was not limited by the landscape at all. It was a completely flat piece of ground. It was a grid. It already had its own XY axis. So the very first time I drove into DFW, I was totally disoriented because I didn't realize I was driving in a map. I don't know if you've ever been there, but this is the way it works. If you come in the southern entrance, you either come in the northern or the southern entrance, depending on what airline you're flying in or out of. Okay, because they're stacked side by side on the left and on the right. Okay, so if you're on America, you're on a flight on American, it's like, oh, come in the north entrance because American's on that side. You can't get from one side to the other. The only way you can do it is by driving all from the south all the way to the north. Then there's a special exit that allows you to make a U-turn to get back in because you
Don't take
came
the
in the
wrong
wrong
turn.
side. Exactly. And it takes a long time. But like the first time I was trying to pick somebody at that airport, every single terminal looks exactly the same. The only thing that's different is the signage.
Got it.
And so I missed my terminal and I had to go to the next one. And then I realized I can't turn around. I've got to go all the way down, come all the way back, and then come back in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and just for the
But that's
audience, DFW is Dallas Fort Worth in Texas, correct?
yeah, airport. And the very first schematic map that was ever developed was for the Paris Underground, and it's still used today, where the map does not resemble the landscape of Paris at all. So the first time I got on the Paris Metro, when I was studying in Europe, we looked at the map and it said that we needed to go from this green station that we were in, a green triangle. We wanted to go to the Eiffel Tower, right? And the line from the triangle to the yellow circle where the Eiffel Tower was straight, and it was about that long. So we're like, oh, this is going to be 5 minutes. We're real close to the Eiffel Tower. It wasn't. It was like 40 minutes, and there were curves in it. And I was like, the map doesn't even look like the landscape anymore. It's a schematic. It's a schematic. It's like reading the schematic for the electronics in your car engine underneath the hood. It doesn't
Right.
resemble the way the wires actually travel. It shows you what connects to something else. So that's what I mean by disorientation. And I think that one of the things that has happened to us is that we have accelerated a distorted view. Okay. And so if I can give you another example, take a look at body aesthetics,
Right.
um, fat in the female form,
Right.
beauty,
Right.
right? The worship of youth that
Yeah. Right.
that has accelerated a kind of distorted view of you know, what we what human beings are supposed to even look like. So if you take a look, for instance, that
I have a question on that, but I'll let you
go
go.
ahead. No, 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 go ahead.
Well, that kind of made me think about just how I'll just kind of tell a quick little story. When I was traveling through South Carolina, I was getting an Uber ride. And one of the things I like to do, for some reason, I don't know why this happened, but it seemed like every Uber driver on my trip across the country, we would somehow talk about porn and things like that. I don't know. I just have a gift, I guess, for talking about porn with people. But it was
Right.
a guy around my age, right? And we were going to this restaurant called Hyman's. It's a famous restaurant in Charleston. Um, really good food, by the way. And he's like, "Oh, that's like an interesting name for a restaurant." And I was
Right.
like, "Oh, like why? I don't know." And he's like, he said something to the effect of like, "Oh, like well, that's like the part of the female body that I think like when someone's cherry gets popped,
Right.
like that's like what it is the hymen." And unbeknownst to me, I was like, "Okay," and I'm like, "Why? How do you know that?" Like, and he's like, "Oh, through porn," just very
Yeah.
casually, just like, "Oh yeah, like I picked that up through porn," and then I kind of put two to two together in my head, and I'm like, "So you're watching porn of somebody's cherry getting popped?" Which to me kind of sounds like that would be somebody potentially like in high school or college, like a
Or
younger
actually,
or
yeah, or
younger
younger.
or
Yeah.
younger, right? And so I think that kind of blends in a little bit to what you're saying is like this youth, this like this this idea of youth. And what we see in porn like today, and like how porn's proliferated, it seems like the girls get younger and younger, um, which, just gives me shivers thinking about
Yeah.
that. It's just really sad to think about, that,
Well, it does go, it goes to much larger, it seems to me, philosophical questions. And I think it's a reflection of, as we've become more and more adept at fighting disease. I'm a cancer survivor. When I was a kid, we called it the C word
mm,
because if you got it, you were going to die.
mm,
And then in the 80s, my generation, Gen X, got to go through it again with AIDS. If you
right.
got it, you were going to die. What the mechanism is for it? It's mainly sex and intravenous drug use, right?
Right.
That's the way human beings get it, generally speaking. I mean, rarely blood transfusion. You had cases like that too. And at the same time, look at the slasher movie. The slasher movie from the 60s and the 70s, and then the advent of AIDS at the very beginning of the 80s, right when AIDS started to be a thing. I was in high school, right? And there is an explosion of slasher movies that are morality plays where what happens to teens who go off in the woods and have sex?
They get murdered.
They get murdered,
Right.
right? And so you've got that. It's almost like it's the punishment for the sexual revolution that happened in the late 60s and rampant through the culture in the 1970s. And then all of a sudden, the 80s, it's like, you know, um, and so you see a reflection of it in film, right? The morality of sexuality. All of a sudden, it's not this you're either a pornographic movie or you're not going to depict it at all. Now we have a blending of the two, but then it's coupled with murder, you know, and that's never gone away, right? And I think these are all connected. But the other thing that has happened, you take a look at the difference in the way supermodel Twiggy, and you've seen this before. Have you seen Victoria's Secret for a long time persisted with the Barbie image of the female form, right? But that was the rarity. You watch fashion shows through the 2000s and the 10s to the 20s,
Right.
and models are clothes hangers, right? Now,
Exactly.
I'm a philosophy guy and I'm a lit guy and I'm a culture guy. And I'm like, look at that. So in the 19th century, there's an author that invents this story called Peter Pan, and it's about a boy that never wants to grow up. Well, what is that? What is that not wanting to grow up? Well, it's really fear of death,
Right.
right? And
Right.
so our worship of, and so the ampleness of the female form is associated with fertility, is associated with bodily life, biological life, and of course the mechanism of death is what? Biological life. And so there's a turn against the very idea of the human body. The human body is the mechanism of death. So if we can take it over, if we can mechanize it, if we can cure it. And so you get at the same time you get this work in the culture as we've been capable of defeating cancer and living longer and longer, right? Notice what happens, for instance, in Hollywood culture. Are women allowed to get old?
No.
They are not. Are men?
Yes.
Yes, because the aesthetics for male beauty has never really changed. None of this technological has changed anything about the way men are supposed to be depicted one way or the other. You can be fat, you can be bald, you can be old, you can be wrinkly, you can be whatever. But a woman,
Right.
absolutely not. She's going to lose her career if she loses her looks. Double standard for sure. Um, and then, but now we're going to talk about the distortion that creates.
Right.
So if the only way you can stay viable in your business for another 10 years is to get plastic surgery, well, there's only a certain number of medical schools that specialize in teaching how to do plastic surgery. There's only a limited number of experts who are developing the technique that that they're teaching to their students. And so you get a really, really small pool of people that are doing to the human face the same things. And so no wonder these women that have too much plastic surgery, and now men, all end up looking like a combination of a fish and a cat,
Right.
completely distorted. And what this has led to, I mean, my theory is that some of these people, I don't think Madonna at this point actually knows what she looks like.
Mm.
I don't think she sees her face in the mirror when she looks in the mirror. She sees an image of what her brain is telling her that face must look like.